Hello everyone, welcome back. So, you may be wondering why I'm doing another Westinghouse OV-50 video. Well, the reason is, the original video I made didn't quite have the detail that I wanted to, and also, since recording that video, I have learned some new information. So, I'm remaking this video because I feel like this fixture deserves a little better presentation. So that is why I am re-recording it. So for a little backstory on this and where I got it, I got this back in April 2nd from another lighting collector, Polaris Lights and Signals, or Ben, if you know him. I'm sure you do if you like these types of things. And he actually got it from another collector. He was just sort of a middleman, but through him I was able to go down to Detroit and purchase this fixture. And I'm very glad I did because it's a very nice one. And although it's not completely original, it does have, I believe, a Westinghouse ballast, a slightly newer one. That's actually the reason I got it. The original owner of this said that he had a bunch of them, or he didn't want to keep all of them because some of them didn't have the original components and he had too many of them to store, so to clear up some space, he was getting rid of some of the imperfect ones. So the person that I got this from actually got it from, I believe it was the Western Woods Mall of Cincinnati, Ohio, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a mall put up in the 1960s that was not super popular, not super famous. I looked it up online. There's not a ton of information on that location, but they did have a bunch of these fixtures, and he was able to save at least 2 of them. Now, looking at Google Maps, I was able to see that they had tons of these fixtures as well as a couple other fixtures, and there was one pole on the back. 2 OV-50s, one had a glare shield. Got removed sometime before 2018, I believe. Now, there's another lighting collector, you see on the lighting gallery. Wide Light 1000 has one of these fixtures with a glare shield on it, which is the same thing, got it from the same person as I did, and it makes me wonder if, no, I didn't ask, but if both of these fixtures came from that mall and were the 2 fixtures that were shown to be missing off the pole way before any of the other fixtures were removed. So if that's true, it's very cool to see where the fixture came from. To be able to own something that you know exactly where it came from is very neat and adds even more to a fixture that's already very cool. And maybe I'll be able to post that Google Maps link so you can see it for yourself, because that was a very cool place that had a bunch of these fixtures. But too bad most of them got trashed. So now we're going to go ahead and look at some cataloged information on this fixture. So this is I believe a 1965 advertisement for Westinghouse. Here's a bunch of their fixtures, and then here on the second page you can see this particular fixture. Get some light on this. So there's that. Pause if you want to read it. You can see the 2 versions. There's one with the fin and one without. Mine clearly has the fin, and the fin was there to store the capacitors. So if you had a remote ballasted version, or maybe a version that didn't need capacitors, you would not have the fin. And the top version here is actually advertised as the remote capacitor version, or the remote ballast. And then also here we have this patent here from a little bit later, and it's kind of interesting. The date on that is actually the same as when Westinghouse started providing the single door version, or the 3rd generation OV-50. This particular patent shows the 2nd generation OV-50. You can tell by the fin shape. You can see how it's made. And what's interesting is this has a sealed optical unit with the bulb in it. So both the lens and the refractor the reflector are connected together. They're sort of crimped together to keep dust out. And then you would replace the whole module, I would assume. And it just sort of plugs into this little socket there. So that is interesting. So I've never seen anything like this actually made, and I don't think that Westinghouse ever actually made that particular design, because every version of the OV-50 like this that I've seen does not have that sealed optical unit. And one more thing here, I got off of eBay. There's a seller online that sells a bunch of old catalogs, and they had this, and this piqued my interest. It's a advertisement from 1960, the Westinghouse OV-50 luminaire, and you can see that it's the finless version again, probably remote ballasted, or the one with the 480 volt ballast that does not need capacitors. I believe that was something that was available, but correct me if I'm wrong. But it's very nice. It's a very large print, and eventually I'm going to get this hung up on the wall, but I have to find the correct frame for it because I really don't feel like paying full price, and I've been looking through the thrift stores and haven't found anything. But again, here's some of the information. Pause it if you want to read, and some other products. So that's some advertising I've seen. Now we'll move on to the fixture. Alright, so here's the fixture laying on its back, and that's for one reason in particular, and that we will get into shortly. So this fixture has always been my favorite luminaire, and that was because, well, first of all, Westinghouse made great products, and this one has a very nice, elegant design that's very streamlined and doesn't look too bulky or unappealing, and it also has a little bit of an industrial look to it, not quite completely finished, as some other fixtures like the M1000 were, and I like that because sort of utilitarian look is always interesting. So we'll start here looking at the outside of the fixture. So I'll start with this door. So the door here, get my light over here, is this very flimsy piece of sheet aluminum, and this has always been perplexing because it's very cheaply made, yet the rest of the fixture is great quality, and they clearly spent a lot of money making this to be a great quality product, but this almost feels like an afterthought. So they didn't go quite all the way as far as making this what it could have been. A cast door would have made this thing a lot nicer, because these are so easy to damage, and you see a lot of these, if they're still in service or they just haven't been taken down yet, these doors will be damaged or just missing. So you can see it has this sort of weird brown speckling to it, and I don't know why that is. It's on all OV-50 luminaires, not on the OV-25 or the OV-14B, only the OV-50, which is strange because you would think all fixtures from Westinghouse made the same time would be made the same way, but apparently not, and we haven't really figured out why it does this. It's not steel or anything like that. It's got to be some sort of brown coating. I wonder if it was some sort of primer or treatment, but then why would it be brown? And why would none of the other fixtures have the same issue? And now here's the biggest issue I have with it. These two hooks that hold the door on, they're very flimsy. Let's see if I can move. You can move that with your barely even any force, and they're riveted on. So these are already very fragile, and if they do break, they are not easy to replace because you have to drill out that rivet. So you're likely to damage the housing that way. I've seen plenty of these where these are not in great shape. Another part of this that's not so user-friendly are these steel latches made by Southco, and they're not stainless, they rust, and they're just kind of finicky. You have to rotate these with a screwdriver in order to remove the door and then lock it in place. And when we open this up, you can see what the inside looks like. They're very simple. It's just a little tab that you rotate, and it holds onto this little tab. Now, while we've got this open, let's look at the tag. Westinghouse OV-50 IB. All the information. This usually was coming off. I glued it back on. You can see this doesn't have that same issue with going brown. So now I'll put this back on and look at the other door. Alright, so here's the other door. Now looking at it here, first thing you'll notice is this absolutely massive embossing that says Westinghouse and the model number. And there's a few companies in the 60s that put their name on the fixture, but Westinghouse is the only one that I know that put the model number on there, and it's really big, so you can read that from the street. It just kind of shows the quality and how much they enjoyed and wanted to promote this fixture. Now this lens here is one of the nicest parts and one of the most expensive parts of this fixture. This is very thick Pyrex glass. It's probably 3/8 inch thick glass. It's very heavy. This glass by itself probably weighs as much as my American Electric Model 115 all put together. Probably about 12 pounds of glass, maybe. And part of the reason I like this so much is because the prisms on it are so basic. Usually with streetlight lenses, the prisms are very complex, designed to spread light in a very fine way. But this one is pretty simple. In fact, this pretty much square here, it's probably like an 8-inch square, is really pretty clear. You can look right inside of the fixture. And then on the front, you have twice as many lines here. On some earlier lenses, like you'll see on the OV-35, you'll actually see this is not like this. It's much less fine. It continues this pattern like the way. And so that's kind of how you can tell the difference between these lenses. One subtle difference, but it is there. And the last thing is going to be kind of hard to capture, but the wonderful Westinghouse logo. It's the older, plain W logo without the dots on it. And it's the same logo that's on the latch. Even the latch has the logo on it. See if I can turn it around. I don't know if that worked, but we'll go with it. And then you've also got these two bumps here. This is kind of looks nice. You have this big block here, and these two little bits here that stick out. Just kind of gives it a little bit unfinished and a little bit more like a tank almost sort of look, in that made for function and made to be sturdy over being the nicest looking thing. So the last thing to really look at on the outside of this fixture is this fin. It's very wide and very thick. Can't quite get the scale across on camera, but it's pretty big. And we can tell this from the later ones is this one, it tapers towards the back. The other version was much more square and thin. If you look at it from this angle, you can see the fin is very wide. If I had to guess, about 14-16 inches across. And there's also a little part on the inside that kind of comes up like that. You can see this is actually called a dual fin OV-50 because it kind of looks like there's two fins, one facing that way and one facing this way, sort of like a V shape. And then right in the middle, in between those, is where the photocell would go, something like this. So now we'll go ahead and look at the inside. Alright, so here we have the door. We're going to open it. So you're going to put your screwdriver in, twist both of them so that they're open. Remove this. Careful how you remove it though, because you will damage that if you are not careful. Yeah, it's just a really poor design, but we're stuck with it. So inside here, you'll start to see you got these nice, very thick cast aluminum slip fitter bolts with stainless steel bolts. See those two screws holes there is where you could add an adapter to mount it on a 1.25" cast arm. Then here we have a terminal block, which has Westinghouse logo again on it, without it's the older style Westinghouse logo. And then the big ballast, which is again not original, but it is a Westinghouse made ballast, probably from the late 60s, if I were to guess. It's basically just a replacement ballast for this. The original ballast would have been much larger and actually two parts, and I believe Westinghouse sold this as a replacement for when those ballasts failed. Right, here we go. Here we are going to open up the latch. So we're going to notice that this is actually a two-stage latch. You pull it out like this. It's not going to do anything because it's sitting on its back, but this would loosen the door. And then you pull it even farther, and you're able to open the door. That. And we'll get a better look at that latch when I open it up. But I'm going to do that off camera because this is very heavy, and I want to be as careful as possible opening it. Alright, so we got this here, and we have the door separate here, so now we can take a look at this and get a good look at the lens. Alright, so here you go. You can kind of see it's very basic on the inside. It's just a door that holds the lens in place, and the lens itself is very big. I don't know exactly how big, but it's very large. Obviously, it's a 1000 watt, 700 watt Mercury fixture, so it needs a large area to disperse the light properly and not be so harsh. So, we'll go ahead and look at the individual parts here. So you have 4 very thin lens tabs here. Those are what hold the lens. So normally on a modern fixture you just have a tab here that you would twist to remove the lens, but this one you actually have to remove both of these all the way and loosen these two, and then you can take out the lens. So it takes a little bit of time to replace the lens on this compared to another fixture. You can do it in like 5 seconds, but this allows it to be a little bit more securely held in place and maybe a little more even pressure distribution. And actually the newer versions had much wider tabs that were kind of triangular shaped to help disperse this and the stress to make it less likely for the lens to crack, because this is a lot of stress because this lens is very heavy all in one small area. So they widen these to kind of reduce that risk of causing damage to the glass. Next here is the latch. This is a very interesting latch, the most complex latch I've seen in a streetlight fixture, and probably the coolest. So what you have is a manual latch. Okay. And so what you do is you pull on this, and you'll notice that it will raise and lower that. That's what the first action does. And then there's a second action, and when you pull it even further, releases it. So the way this works is when you pull this and you latch it, this is what grabs onto the door, and then you push this closed, and this sucks that door up into the fixture to create a nice seal to reduce the amount of bugs that can get in there and moisture. So it's a much more seal system that way. Allows for it to get a little more leverage on that clip there and hold the door more securely. However, if you don't push this in all the way, it's not going to be completely latched properly, and it might be at risk of falling. So, unlike other fixtures, usually you would see a latch like this would be spring-loaded, so it would automatically lock itself, but this one is not. Next thing here is you'll see we have some letters stamped onto this, just some identification, just some part numbers, nothing really that meaningful, and also a drip hole. Now the coolest thing here is the lens, and we'll get a better look at this. It's very nice Pyrex lens on the inside. It's very smooth, well finished. And then we can look at the embossing on the rim. Westinghouse, the part number, and all of that information. Let's see, so it says Pyrex, made in USA, for Westinghouse. Doesn't have a lot stamped on it, but it does have some information. Looking again from the side, it's very nice. On the outside here, it's completely smooth. Only part that's rough is on the back here, where you got these large Westinghouse sort of ribs on the back to diffuse the light on the house side. And also some ribs here, supposedly to help project some light forward, because this is, I believe, a Type 4 distribution. And if you don't know what that means, you can go search it up on Google, and you'll get sort of a visual that shows you what that means. There are, I believe, 5 different types of distribution. So that's the door assembly. One other thing worth noting is that this latch is actually one solid piece. So you remove these 2 screws, and then the latch assembly comes out, and you can't take it apart. It's all riveted together, but you can replace the entire latch instead of just parts of it. Another point I want to quickly make here is this thickness of this metal. It's probably almost a 1/4 inch thick here up by the latch, and I've never seen a street light before with a casting this thick. Can't really show you exactly, but it's ridiculous how nice that is, and it's very rigid. So yeah, that is a really cool feature. So now we're back looking at the fixture after we've seen that. So we'll start here again. You can see these. You've also already seen these very nice quality brackets. And then you'll see there's some screw holes here. Now those are either mounting for the original ballast, or those are for the Westinghouse OV-25, because this housing here, this part, is actually identical to the OV-25. There's only a few minor differences made for the OV-50 that you'll see here, but it's the same size and shape. I'm sure it also has the same hole patterns. They just cut a hole in it for the fin. And speaking of the fin, you can see that screw there. That's one of the screws that holds on the fin. So if you want to take that out, you have to take this whole ballast assembly out in order to access the capacitors. That's part of the reason why this fixture is known for being in rather poor shape when found, because no electrician is going to want to take the time to take this whole thing apart just to replace the capacitor in the factory spec. So you have very nice thick castings here for the main supports here. These are sort of what hold the whole thing together. Very nice. You got a part number also stamped on it. And then next here, nice stamped bracket two pieces that hold on the socket. Very big porcelain socket on this. It's very impressive. And I haven't seen a street light with this sort of socket before. Only Westinghouse fixtures. I've seen it on the OV-10. Don't know if the OV-25 used this. And I'm referring to the OV-25 split door, because that was made during the same time period as this fixture. So continuing, here we have some wires here that I'll pull out. That's just so I can directly plug this in and put an incandescent lamp in it for now. Now inside, pretty simple. You see this hole here? That's where the one of the coils of the ballast would actually stick in here somehow, probably mounted with these screws. But that's no longer here, and you'll see this strap here that's very rusted, and it's broken in half, and that's not factory original. No, it's not. That is actually something put in here later with this ballast, because this is where the capacitor was. The electrician mounted the capacitor this way to save time, because all the time it would take to replace the capacitor the way it was meant to be would be very inefficient, especially up on a pole. But this is just their sort of solution. It's very common. And OV-50 is this sort of modification. Next, here you will also see this screw here. That's the other screw that holds on the fin. There's only two screws, but they seem to do an okay job. See some more mounting there. This is probably also what held on the other coil. Now the big thing here, we have this reflector, which is stamped. It's painted black on the back. Probably help aid in heat transfer. Pull some of that heat away from the bulb so it doesn't burn quite as hot. See a mold line there. And then way up at the front, this piece here. This is where the latch holds onto. It's very thick. And the reflector. To take out the reflector, you take out this cotter pin. And you can take out this. This is part of the reflector. You can see how that's held together. So this reflector won't come out right now. And I'm not going to take this cotter pin out because I don't want to break it. So the way I've taken this out before is just take out these two screws. It's just an easier way to take it apart without worrying about damaging or losing a part. Now here is the reflector, very big, and this, I don't know if it would have had a sticker here originally saying that it was 700 watt mercury vapor, but if it did, it's not there anymore. But very big. It's got some corrosion on it, unfortunately, but it's not the worst reflector I've seen. Definitely could use some polishing, but not right now. There's something kind of interesting about this fixture. There's this very deep throat here that is used here to accommodate the bulb, because the 700 watt, 1000 watt bulbs are so big. This reflector, you need that in order to fit that bulb in here, because they have a large stem on them that wouldn't fit. So the socket is way down there. That's just about it for that. I may take out this reflector to show what that looks like. So here we go. I've taken it apart, and we can look at the reflector. So you can see the black paint here. It started to wear off on the top, where it would have been the hottest because heat rises. So I'm assuming that's the reason. You can also see the collar. It's very big, used to accommodate that big 1000 watt lamp. And the inside here, again, it's a pretty simple reflector, but it works. You also notice that this lip here, there's no gasket. And this would have originally had one of those gray gaskets that are known for not exactly lasting the best. So it just kind of makes sense why a fixture like this would have lost that gasket. And I could replace it with something, but I just haven't done it yet. it really wasn't a super big priority. So, yeah, this isn't going outside or back in service anytime soon, so it doesn't really matter. Though I definitely should do that just to make it a little more original. Alright, so here's the fixture again. You can see 2 screws there where that came from the mold. It's got another part number on it. And you can kind of see now maybe a little better. It just uses the OV-25 upper housing, except with that square cut in it to allow it to pass to the fin. So that's, again, this compartment here is where a secondary coil would be. I believe that would change the voltage or something to... It was something to do with feeding the main coil, so... It's pretty empty. See 2 screws there that may also be to hold in the other coil, but it seemed kind of odd that it would attach the fin. But maybe, just maybe, that's how it attached that second coil on, and if it did, that would make even more sense as to why these never got serviced properly. That would be an absolute pain to fix up in service, up when it was on the pole. Telling of cats, but anyway, besides the cat hair, got some wires here. This is not connected up. Lamp, and there's another wire down there. One of the connectors actually broke off, so that's annoying. So one of the ways that I can tell I was told that this was an original ballast is this strap. So the ballast itself is just hanging. I can actually move it if I apply pressure on it. Maybe. Yeah, you can see it's moving. But it's kind of concerning that it's sitting like that, but it hasn't fallen out. And that's apparently the way that the OEM Westinghouse ballasts would have attached. So it is apparently a proper Westinghouse ballast. So now we're going to take a look at the fin and the top of the fixture. I'm not going to open the fin because there's nothing inside it. I removed the capacitors, and the reason I did that is because they were leaking and gross and they smelled. So I took those out, cleaned out the inside of it with some soap and whatnot, just to make room for if I do put new capacitors in it, and the old ones were just in really bad shape. So again, you have that same OV-25 housing shared between the 2 fixtures, and this fin is very large. You can see kind of why it's called a dual fin. It's got this little valley in here between these 2 parts, and maybe we can get a better shot of what that looks like. Yeah, that's why it's called dual fin. And anyway, you'll notice that there's also a circular pad here. That's where you would mount a photocell if you choose to have one. So that photocell would just go right there. Obviously this doesn't have the socket, and I don't plan to add one because that's not original to this fixture, and I'm going to keep it as found. Anyway, all the paint's worn off of it, so you can see the cool aluminum color. It actually looks pretty neat because it has all that swirling and the imperfections of the cast aluminum. So I think that actually looks a lot nicer than you would expect from something missing the paint, just because it almost looks like some sort of artwork. Anyway, got a nice dent there. One small issue with this particular fixture, I don't know if I pointed out before, it's got a small crack right there. Not a huge deal, doesn't affect it in any way, but it's annoying. See if I can focus. Yeah, a small crack there. But really, it's barely noticeable, and I actually didn't even notice that until I was doing my sort of deep cleaning of this fixture. Anyway, obviously the ballast is not connected, and I'm not going to connect it for a while. I do have a bulb for it, but I just don't really have the motivation to get it running, because I don't really have a way to properly run it without damaging the glass. I don't know if running these with like the glass facing upward may damage the glass because of how much heat that it would be experiencing, more so than it was designed to. And that glass is way too difficult to replace, so if I want to get this thing up and running, I should probably install it on that pole and I have in my backyard and get a good video of it, because it's going to be a pain to record this working. But at least I do have the ability to put a small 300 watt incandescent bulb. This won't produce as much heat or as much light. It won't be the right color temperature, but it can kind of show what that glass looks like when it's lit up. So I'm going to go ahead and get this put back together and then kind of close out the video. Alright, so here we go. We have it closed back up. And I actually had an incident here closing it up. The door didn't quite match up. And when I closed it, it almost closed all the way. And the latch was stuck in the open position. It would not budge. So, just sort of a warning, if you don't close these exactly perfectly aligned, they will lock up. Actually, that's the first time I've had that happen, but very odd. It wouldn't do anything. The latch was stuck in the open position like that. I could wiggle on it, wouldn't do anything, and the door wouldn't open or move in any way. I had the screwdriver moving it a little bit, and I was just able to get it enough centered that it would be able to right itself. Just a little caution. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for this fixture. Now really the only thing left to do is to turn it on. So we're using incandescent bulbs, so it's not going to look exactly right, but we can at least see what those prisms look like. And I'm actually going to turn off some lights here. And yeah, that is a wonderful piece of glass. See how that looks? And sort of the distribution. Definitely very bright with that 300 watt lamp. So anyways, that's all I have on this fixture. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thought it was better than my original one I made. And anyway, don't really have anything else to say, so thanks for watching, and bye for now.